The flour merchant wanted the bakehouse, and Jonas Morrow knew it the moment he finished counting the sacks of winter grain piled against the storeroom wall. 12 sacks, half of them showing the telltale dark specks of blight. Not enough to poison anyone, but enough that the loaves would be dense and bitter, and the customers would go elsewhere. He ran his hand through his hair and did the arithmetic again, hoping the numbers would change. They did not. 3 months until spring planting, and his credit with the merchant was already stretched thin. The old stone oven his grandfather had built was the finest in the village, and everyone knew it. Everyone also knew that Jonas had inherited more skill than silver. He loaded the day's delivery into his cart before dawn, 8 loaves for the inn and a dozen rolls for the Reeves household. The road was frozen hard, the sky the color of old pewter. Halfway to the inn he saw her, a small figure hunched beside a fallen oak, green skin stark against the snow. An orc. He could see the ash stripe painted across her forehead even from a distance, the mark of exile. She did not look up as his cart approached, and he did not stop. But when he was past her, he reached back, broke one of his loaves in half and tossed it and his gloves onto the ground behind him. He did not look back. 2 days later he woke to find a cord of firewood stacked neatly beside his door. He had not ordered firewood. He had not asked for firewood. He stood in the pre-dawn cold, his breath misting, and wondered. The next morning there was more, and the morning after that he found the crack in his oven flue had been patched with clay and river stone, the seal so neat and tight that the draft pulled better than it had in years. He waited up that night, wrapped in a blanket by the cold hearth, and when he heard the soft scrape of wood being stacked, he went to the door and opened it. She froze, a split log in each hand. Up close he could see she was young, maybe his own age, with small tusks that barely showed past her upper lip and ears that came to delicate points. Her clothes were threadbare, patched with mismatched scraps. The ash stripe on her forehead was faded but still visible. She set the logs down slowly, her dark eyes wary. "You do not owe me anything," Jonas said. "It was half a loaf." "It was food when I had none," she said. Her voice was low and careful. "And gloves when my hands were freezing. I repay debts." "Then you have repaid it 3 times over." The flue alone was worth more than bread. She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing options, none of them good. An exile had no clan, no home, no protection. Winter was the worst time to be alone. "Can you bake?" Jonas asked, her brow furrowed. "No, can you learn?" "I can learn anything." "Then come inside. It is too cold to talk out here, and if you are going to keep stacking my firewood, you might as well do it during daylight and get paid for it." She did not move. "You would hire me." "I need help. You need work. It seems straightforward." "I am an exile. I can see that. Do you know how to knead dough?" "No." "Then we start there. Come on. The oven needs heating, and I have 3 dozen loaves to make before noon." Her name was Renna, and she learned faster than anyone he had ever taught. Her hands were strong and sure, and she did not complain about the heat or the hours or the flour dust that got into everything. She slept in the storeroom on a pallet he made from empty grain sacks, and she ate the bread that came out misshapen or scorched. She did not talk much, but she listened. And when she did speak, it was to ask precise questions about temperature and timing and the way different grains behaved in the oven's heat. The customers did not like it. Jonas heard the muttering, saw the sidelong looks. The blacksmith stopped buying his rolls. The cooper's wife made a point of sniffing her loaf and asking if the recipe had changed. But the Reeves steward kept ordering, and the inn still needed its daily delivery, and Jonas found that he did not care as much as he thought he would. Renna worked harder than any apprentice he could have hired, and she never once asked for more than he offered. One evening, A month into winter, they sat by the fire after the day's baking was done. She was mending her cloak with a needle and thread he had given her fingers quick and neat. He was sketching out a new design for a bread stamp, something to mark his loaves as distinct. "Why did you take exile?" he asked. He had not meant to ask, but the question had been sitting in his chest for weeks, her hands stilled. "That is not a polite question." "I know." "You do not have to answer." She was quiet for a long time, and he thought she would not speak. Then she set down her mending and looked at the fire. "My brother broke an oath. He was young and stupid, and he swore to guard the clan's winter stores, and he let his friends talk him into taking some of the smoked meat for a hunting trip. It was not much, but an oath is an oath. The penalty was exile, and he had just turned 15. So I went to the elders and said I had told him to take the meat, that it was my idea. They did not believe me, but they could not prove otherwise, and I was older. Old enough to survive exile, they thought. So they marked me and sent me out, and my brother stayed." Jonas set down his sketch. "That was brave. It was necessary. He would not have lasted a month alone. Do you regret it?" She picked up her mending again, her jaw tight. "He is alive and safe. That is what matters. But you are not safe. I am alive, and I have work and a roof and bread. That is more than I had a month ago." He wanted to say something else, something that would ease the hard set of her shoulders, but he did not have the words. So he went back to his sketch, and she went back to her mending, and the fire crackled between them. Winter deepened. The snow piled high against the bakehouse walls, and the road became a narrow track between white drifts. Renna brought in wild grains she foraged from the forest edges, seeds that added a nutty sweetness to the bread, and she knew which trees had hives and how to trade with the beekeeper for honey without paying the merchant's markup. The loaves improved. Even the cooper's wife stopped sniffing them. Jonas's debts did not shrink, but they stopped growing, and that felt like victory enough. Then the emissary came. It was early in the second month of winter, a day so cold the spit froze before it hit the ground. Jonas was shaping rolls when the door opened and an orc stepped inside, tall and broad-shouldered, with ceremonial paint across his arms and a heavy fur cloak. Renna, who had been checking the oven temperature, went very still. The emissary looked at her, then at Jonas, then back at her. "Renna Vors, I am sent by the clan elders." She straightened, her face carefully blank. "I am listening. Your brother has confessed. He went to the elders and told them the truth, that he acted alone and you lied to spare him. He has asked to take the exile in your place." Jonas saw Renna's hands clench at her sides. "He is a fool." "Perhaps. But his confession changes the judgment. The elders have agreed to lift your exile. You may return to the clan and your name will be restored. But you must come before the thaw right, when the snows begin to melt and the clan gathers to renew the year's oaths. If you do not come by then, the offer is void and the exile stands. And my brother, he will take a lesser penalty. Labor service, not exile." The elders acknowledge that he was young when the offense occurred and that he has shown honor by confessing now. But you must return to be formally restored. It is the only way. Renna did not answer. The emissary waited, then nodded. "The thaw rite will be held at the new moon after the first melt. You know where the clan gathers. Think on it." He turned and left, the cold wind swirling in behind him before the door closed. Jonas set down the dough he had been shaping. "You should go." Renna turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "You want me to leave? I want you to have your name back, your family, your life. I have work here. You have work here until spring, when I can hire an apprentice from the village. You should be with your people, Renna. Not stuck in a storeroom because you repaid a debt." She crossed the room in 3 strides and stood in front of him, her eyes fierce. "Do you think I stay because of debt? Do you think I am that much of a fool? He blinked, caught off guard by the heat in her voice. I think you deserve better than this. Better than honest work and fair pay and a place where no one spits at me when I walk past. Better than someone who trusts me with his livelihood and does not treat me like I am something to be afraid of. She shook her head. You do not understand. The clan will take me back, yes, but I will always be the one who lied to the elders. I will always be the one who was exiled. Here, I am just Renna, who bakes bread and stacks firewood and fixes oven flues. That is worth more to me than you know. Jonas looked at her, this fierce, proud woman who had learned his craft in a few short weeks and never once asked for pity, and something shifted in his chest, something dangerous and warm and utterly foolish. Then stay, he said quietly, as long as you want. But think about it, Renna. Your brother confessed so you could go home. That took courage. You should not throw it away lightly. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then turned back to the oven. I will think about it. But Jonas could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands moved just a little too quickly, and he knew the decision was tearing at her. 3 days later, the merchant came. His name was Cyrus Thorne, and he owned half the trade that moved through the village. He arrived in the morning, flanked by 2 hired men, and rapped on the bakehouse door with the head of his walking stick. Jonas answered, wiping flour from his hands. Morrow, Thorne said. His voice was smooth and cold. We need to discuss your account. I made the last payment on time. You did, but I have been reviewing my ledgers and I find myself in need of liquidity. I am calling in several debts early, yours among them. Jonas felt his stomach drop. The terms were until spring. The terms are whatever I say they are. Read the contract. I have the right to demand payment in full with 10 days' notice. Consider this your notice. Thorne smiled, showing too many teeth. 40 silver marks, Morrow. 10 days. That is impossible. You know I do not have that much. Then you will sell the bakehouse. I already have a buyer interested. They are prepared to offer 30 marks, and I will forgive the remaining 10 as a gesture of goodwill. This bakehouse has been in my family for 3 generations. Then perhaps your family should have managed their finances better. Thorne glanced past Jonas to where Renna stood by the oven. His lip curled. Or perhaps you should not have hired orc labor and tainted your reputation. People talk, Morrow. They say your bread smells different now, tastes strange. Some wonder if it is safe to eat. Jonas stepped forward, his hands clenching into fists. My bread is the same as it has always been, and you know it. You are doing this because you want the oven. I am doing this because I am a businessman and you are a debtor. 10 days, Morrow. Find the silver or find a new trade. Thorne turned and walked away, his hired men following like shadows. Jonas closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. 40 silver marks. He did not have 40 copper marks, let alone silver. The bakehouse was all he had, the only thing his grandfather had left him. He looked at Renna, who was watching him with dark, steady eyes. He cannot do that, she said. Can he? He can. The contract gives him the right. I signed it when I bought the last batch of grain, and I did not read the terms carefully enough. I needed the flour, and he knew it. Jonas pushed away from the door and started pacing. I could sell tools. The cart, maybe, but it would not be enough, not even half enough. What about the village reeve? Can he not intervene? Not in a private contract. Thorne has the law on his side. Jonas stopped pacing and looked at the oven. The old stone his grandfather had laid by hand, the iron door his father had forged. 3 generations. And now it would go to a merchant who wanted it only because someone else had built something worth taking. Renna crossed the room and stood beside him. There is always a way, we just have to find it. For 3 days they worked and schemed. Renna foraged wild grains and traded them for what little coin she could get. Jonas sold his spare tools, his father's old cloak, the silver cup that had been his mother's. It added up to 8 marks, then 10, then 12. Not enough. Not nearly enough. On the 4th day, Jonas went to the reeve anyway and laid out the situation. The reeve, a grizzled man named Aldrich, listened and frowned. "Thorn is within his rights," Aldrich said. "But I will grant you this much. If he is spreading slander about your bread being tainted, that is another matter. Bring me proof and I will haul him before the village assembly. It will not forgive your debt, but it might make him think twice about squeezing you quite so hard." Jonas left with that small comfort and went back to the bakehouse. Renna was waiting and she had news of her own. "I spoke to the beekeeper," she said. "He told me something interesting. Thorn has been hoarding grain. He bought up most of the harvest from the southern farms and he is storing it, waiting for prices to rise. The beekeeper thinks he is planning to sell it back to the village at twice the cost when the winter stores run low." Jonas felt a cold spark of anger. If that is true, it is illegal. The reeve would have to act. Then we need proof, and I think I know where to find it. That night, Renna led Jonas through the snow to the old mill at the edge of the village, a building Thorn owned but rarely used. The door was barred, but Renna had brought tools and she worked the lock open with quick, sure hands. Inside, stacked to the rafters, were sacks of grain. Hundreds of them, enough to feed the village twice over. "This is it," Jonas said. "This is the proof." They went back to the reeve at first light, and Aldrich came with his men to see for himself. When he saw the hoard, his face went dark with fury. Thorn was summoned, and the village assembly was called. The merchant blustered and threatened, but the evidence was plain. Hoarding grain to drive up prices was a crime against the commons, and the penalty was forfeiture of the goods and a fine equal to their value. Thorn's trading license was revoked on the spot, and his assets seized. In the chaos, Jonas found himself standing in the assembly hall while Aldrich recalculated debts and claims. When the reeve finally called him forward, the news was better than he had dared hope. "Thorn's early call on your debt is void," Aldrich said. "The original terms stand, and given that his grain is now forfeit to the village stores, I am crediting you the value of the flour he sold you at inflated prices. Your debt is reduced to 12 silver marks, payable by spring as originally agreed. You keep your bakehouse, Morrow." Jonas felt his knees go weak with relief. "Thank you. Thank your apprentice. She is the one who found the hoard." Aldrich glanced at Renna, who stood quietly at the back of the hall. "Sharp eyes and sharper wits. You are lucky to have her." That night, Jonas and Renna sat by the fire again, the weight of the past week finally lifting. She was smiling, a rare and fleeting expression, and he found himself smiling back. "We did it," he said. "The bakehouse is safe. You did it. I just pointed you in the right direction. You did more than that. You saved everything." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. "I have something for you." She looked at the cloth, curious. "What is it? Open it." She unwrapped it carefully and found a plain silver ring, tarnished with age. It was simple, unadorned, the kind of thing a farm wife might wear. "It was my grandmother's," Jonas said. "It is the only thing I did not sell. I kept it because it was hers, and because I thought maybe one day I would give it to someone who mattered. But now I think I should sell it after all and use the money to pay down more of the debt. Unless—" He trailed off, suddenly unsure. Renna was staring at the ring, her expression unreadable. "Unless what?" she asked quietly. "Unless you think you might want it. Not now. I know it is too soon and you have the offer from your clan and I have no right to ask. But if you stay, Renna, if you choose to stay, I would want you to have it, as a promise, maybe, that this place is yours as much as it is mine, that you are not just an apprentice or a hired hand but someone He stopped, his courage failing. Someone you what? Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Someone I care about. More than I should, probably. More than is wise. But I do, and I thought you should know. She set the ring down gently on the table and looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face. The thaw rite is in 6 weeks. If I do not go, my exile stands forever. I will never be able to return to my clan, never see my brother again, never be anything but an outcast. I know. And you would ask me to give that up. For you, for a bakehouse and a village that still looks at me like I am something dirty. I am not asking you to give up anything. I am telling you what I feel and what I hope, and then I am leaving the choice to you. If you go, I will understand. If you stay, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you do not regret it. He picked up the ring and held it out to her. But I do not want you to choose until you have seen your clan again, until you know what you are walking away from. So take the ring, keep it, and when the time comes, decide. She took the ring, her fingers brushing his. You are asking me to go. I am asking you to go so that when you come back, if you come back, it is because you chose this, chose me, not because you had no other option. Her eyes were bright, and he thought she might be close to tears, though she did not let them fall. What if I go and they convince me to stay? Then I will miss you every day for the rest of my life, and I will bake bread and remember the winter you saved my bakehouse. She closed her hand around the ring and stood. I need to think. I know. She went to the storeroom and closed the door, and Jonas sat by the fire alone, wondering if he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The next week passed in a strange, tense quiet. Renna worked as hard as ever, but there was a distance between them now, a careful space that neither of them crossed. Jonas did not push. He had said what he needed to say, and now the rest was up to her. Then one morning she came to him with a packed traveling bag and the ring on a cord around her neck. I am going to the thaw rite, she said. I need to see my brother. I need to know he is all right. Jonas nodded, his throat tight. I understand. I will be back before the rite begins. But if I decide to stay with the clan, I will send word. You should not wait for me. I will wait as long as it takes. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned and walked out the door. Jonas watched her go, a small figure in a patched cloak, and felt the winter close in around him. But 2 days later he locked the bakehouse and packed his own bag. He had been thinking about what she said, about seeing her brother, about needing to know. And he realized that if she was going to choose, she needed to do it freely. Not bound by gratitude or guilt or the memory of a half loaf of bread. She needed to be restored to her clan, to have her name and her honor back, and then she could decide. He did not know where the clan gathered for the thaw rite, but he knew the general direction from the emissaries' travel, and he knew how to ask. He walked through the snow, following the frozen roads and the paths the hunters used, and he asked every orc he met if they knew where the Vor's clan would be. Most ignored him. A few told him to leave. One, an old woman with silver streaks in her hair, looked at him for a long time and then pointed north. 3 days' walk. Follow the river until you see the standing stones. But if you go there, human, you go at your own risk. The clans do not welcome outsiders to their rites. I am not going to interfere, I just need to see someone. Then you are a fool, but it is your life. She walked away, shaking her head. Jonas walked for 3 days, sleeping in the open and rationing the bread he had brought. The cold bit through his cloak and his feet went numb, but he kept moving. On the 3rd day he saw the standing stones, ancient and weathered, arranged in a circle on a hilltop. Below them, in a wide clearing, he saw the clan. There were perhaps 200 orcs gathered, their tents and fires spread across the snow. The air smelled of smoke and roasting meat, and he could hear the low murmur of voices. the clang of tools being sharpened, the laughter of children. He stayed at the edge of the clearing, half hidden behind a stand of pines, and watched. He saw Renna almost immediately. She was standing near the center of the gathering, talking to a young orc man who had to be her brother. They had the same eyes, the same set to their shoulders. The brother was gesturing animatedly, and Renna was shaking her head, her expression caught between exasperation and fondness. Jonas felt something twist in his chest. This was her family, her people. How could he ask her to leave this? He stayed hidden, watching as the clan prepared for the rite. They built a great bonfire at the center of the standing stones, and as the sun set, they began to gather around it. An elder stepped forward, an orc woman with silver hair and a staff carved with intricate patterns, and she raised her arms for silence. "We gather at the thaw rite to renew the bonds of clan and honor," the elder said. Her voice carried across the clearing, strong and clear. "To welcome back those who have been lost, and to reaffirm the oaths that hold us together. Tonight, we restore one who was marked in error, whose exile was taken in honor, and whose name will be cleared. Renna Vors, step forward." Renna moved through the crowd and stood before the elder. Jonas could see the ash stripe on her forehead, faded but still visible. The elder dipped her fingers in a bowl of water and wiped the stripe away, her movements slow and deliberate. Then she placed her hand on Renna's shoulder. "Your exile is lifted. Your name is restored. You are of the Vors clan, and you are welcome among us." The crowd murmured approval, and Renna's brother stepped forward to embrace her. Jonas saw her stiffen, then relax into the hug, and he knew he should leave. He had seen what he came to see. She was home. She was safe. She was where she belonged. But then Renna pulled back from her brother and turned to face the elder. "I am grateful for the restoration of my name," she said, her voice carrying in the cold air. "But I cannot stay." The crowd went quiet. The elder frowned. "Cannot or will not. Both. I have a life outside the clan now. Work I care about, a place I chose, and a person I—" She stopped, her jaw tightening. "I came to see my brother and to have my name cleared because I did not want to carry the weight of exile anymore, but my home is not here. You would refuse the clan." The elder's voice was sharp now, edged with disapproval. "After we lifted your exile and welcomed you back, I am not refusing the clan. I am choosing a different path, one I walked into freely and one I will walk out of freely." Renna looked at her brother. "You confessed so I could come home. I will always love you for that, but I do not belong here anymore. I have not belonged here since the day I left." Her brother's face crumpled. "Renna, please, I did this so we could be together again. I know, and I am grateful. But you need to let me go the way I let you go when I took your exile. You have your life and I have mine now. That does not mean I do not care. It just means we are both free." The elder stepped forward, her expression hard. "If you leave now, you leave as one of the clan. You will be welcome at our fires and our rites, but you will not be one of us in the way you were. Do you understand?" "I understand," Renna said quietly, "and I accept it." The elder nodded, then stepped back. The crowd began to murmur again, some voices approving, some disapproving, and Jonas knew this was his moment. If he stayed hidden, Renna would leave and come back to the bakehouse, and they would go on as they had been. But she would always wonder if she had made the choice freely, or if she had been backed into a corner by circumstance and obligation. He stepped out from the trees and walked into the clearing. The orcs saw him immediately, and the murmuring stopped. Every eye turned to him, and he felt the weight of their stares like a physical thing. But he kept walking until he stood in front of the elder. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "My name is Jonas Morrow. I am the human Renna worked for this winter. I came to make sure she had the chance to decide freely, without any obligation to me or anyone else. I wanted her name restored so she could choose her future unbound. The elder looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. You are the baker. I am. She spoke of you, of honest work and fair pay and a place where she was not treated as something to fear. The elder's eyes narrowed. And now you come here to our right to do what? Claim her? No, to make sure she knows she is free. That if she chooses to stay with her clan, I will not hold it against her. That she owes me nothing. And if she chooses you, Jonas glanced at Renna, who was staring at him with wide eyes, then I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never regrets it. The elder snorted, a sound that might have been amusement. You are either very brave or very foolish human, probably both. She turned to Renna. Is this the person you spoke of, the one you care about? Renna nodded, her voice catching. Yes, and you choose him over your clan. I choose a life I built with my own hands, one I am proud of, one that makes me happy. Renna looked at Jonas, and there were tears on her cheeks now, though her voice was steady. He gave me bread when I was starving and gloves when I was freezing, and he never once asked me why I was alone or what I had done to deserve exile. He just gave because he could. And then he gave me work and a place to sleep and trust. And then he gave me this. She pulled the cord from around her neck and held up the ring, the silver catching the firelight. He told me to come here to see my clan and my brother, and to decide freely. He did not want me to choose him out of obligation or gratitude. He wanted me to choose him because I wanted to, so I did. I do. Jonas felt his breath catch. Renna crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and stood in front of him, the ring in her open palm. You walked 3 days through the snow to make sure I could choose freely, she said, her voice low and fierce. You are the strangest, most stubborn, most infuriating man I have ever met, and I love you for it. Jonas took the ring from her palm and held it up. May I? She held out her hand, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. Then she reached up, cupped his face in her hands, and kissed him. It was a fierce, claiming kiss, full of all the things they had not said and all the things they would say in time. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and murmurs, and Jonas heard the elder's voice cutting through the noise. Enough. If you are going to make a spectacle of yourselves, at least do it properly. The elder raised her staff. Renna Vors, you have chosen your path. Jonas Morrow, you have walked 3 days in the cold to honor that choice. By the old laws, a bond made freely at the thaw rite is a bond that cannot be broken. If you would pledge to one another, do it now, before these witnesses, and let it be recorded. Renna pulled back, her eyes searching Jonas's face. You do not have to do this now. We can wait. I have been waiting since the day I met you, Jonas said. I do not want to wait any more. She smiled, bright and fierce, and turned to the elder. Then we pledge. The elder nodded and gestured for them to step forward. The crowd pressed in around them, a circle of faces lit by firelight, and Jonas felt Renna's hand slip into his. Speak your pledge, the elder said. Jonas looked at Renna, at this woman who had repaid a half loaf of bread with loyalty and skill, and a love he did not deserve but would spend his life trying to earn. I pledge to you my work, my home, and my heart. I will bake bread beside you and build a life with you, and I will honor you every day for as long as I live. Renna's eyes were shining. I pledge to you my strength, my trust, and my love. I will stand beside you and work beside you, and I will choose you every day for as long as I live. The elder struck her staff against the ground. Then by the witness of the Vors clan and the law of the thaw rite, I name you pledged. May your bond be strong, your work be fruitful, and your days be long. The crowd cheered, and Renna's brother stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. He embraced his sister, then turned to Jonas and gripped his shoulder. Take care of her. I will, Jonas said, and if you hurt her I will come for you. I would expect nothing less. The brother smiled through his tears and stepped back. The elder gestured to the bonfire. You are welcome to share our feast if you wish. It is not often we have a human at our thaw rite, and never one who has pledged to one of our own. This is a night for new traditions, it seems. Jonas and Renna stayed for the feast, sharing food and stories with the clan. The orcs were wary at first, but Renna's brother vouched for Jonas, and the elder's approval carried weight. By the time the moon was high, Jonas found himself sitting by the fire with a cup of something strong and bitter, listening to an old orc hunter tell a story about a winter hunt that had gone spectacularly wrong. Renna sat beside him, her hand in his, the ring glinting on her finger. When the fire burned low and the crowd began to disperse, Renna's brother found them again. You should stay the night. It is too cold to travel now and you look half frozen already. Jonas nodded, grateful. They were given a tent at the edge of the clearing, small but warm, with furs piled thick on the ground. Renna built a small fire in the fire pit at the center of the tent, and they sat together in the flickering light. Are you all right? Jonas asked. Leaving the clan again, I mean. Renna leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. I am more than all right. I got to see my brother, and I got to leave freely this time with my name intact and my choices my own. And I get to go home with you. What more could I want? I just want to make sure you do not have regrets. I told you before, Jonas, regret is a waste of time. I made my choice and I am happy with it. Are you happy with it? He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. Happier than I have any right to be. They sat in silence for a while, and then Renna tilted her head up and kissed him again, slower this time, sweet and deliberate. Jonas felt the world narrow to just the two of them, the fire and the furs and the warmth of her against him. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling. We should sleep, she said. We have a long walk back tomorrow and you are going to need your strength. For the walk, and for the bakehouse, and for everything else. She settled into the furs and pulled him down beside her. We have a lot of bread to bake, Jonas Morrow. And a lot of life to live. He kissed her forehead and wrapped his arms around her. Then we had better get started. They left the next morning, the clan seeing them off with well wishes and a pack of supplies that would see them home. Renna's brother walked with them to the edge of the clearing and hugged his sister one more time. Come back and visit, he said. When you can, I want to see this bakehouse that stole you from us. I will, Renna promised, and you can come visit us too. We always have bread, and the oven is warm. He smiled and stepped back, and Jonas and Renna walked away hand in hand, into the forest and toward home. The walk back took 4 days instead of 3, because Jonas had not eaten or slept properly on the way out, and Renna insisted they take their time. They talked as they walked, about the bakehouse and what they would do in the spring, about the debts Jonas still owed and how they would pay them down together. They talked about the future, about children maybe someday, and about the life they would build in the little bakehouse with the old stone oven. When they finally reached the village, it was late afternoon, and the sky was the color of old brass. The bakehouse looked exactly as they had left it, sturdy and plain, with smoke curling from the chimney where Jonas had banked the fire before he left. Renna stopped in front of the door and looked up at the building, her expression thoughtful. It is not much, Jonas said, suddenly self-conscious. Just a bakehouse and a storeroom and a lot of hard work. It is home, Renna said simply. She opened the door and stepped inside, and Jonas followed. The oven was still warm, the embers glowing faintly in the hearth. The smell of flour and yeast and old wood filled the air, familiar and comforting. Renna set down her bag and turned to Jonas, her eyes bright. We should bake something, she said. To mark the occasion. Now, we just walked for 4 days, exactly. And I am hungry, and baking always makes things feel real. She crossed to the flour sacks and pulled one open, scooping out a handful and letting it run through her fingers. Come on, Jonas. Teach me how to make that honey bread you have been promising. He laughed and joined her, and they worked side by side as the light faded outside. The dough came together under their hands, soft and fragrant, and they shaped it into loaves and set them to rise by the fire. While they waited, Renna made tea and Jonas told her about the orders that would be waiting when they opened again, and she told him about the wild grains she wanted to try harvesting in the spring. When the loaves were ready, they slid them into the oven and watched through the iron door as the crusts turned golden. The smell filled the bakehouse, rich and sweet, and when Jonas pulled the loaves out they were perfect. He broke one open and handed half to Renna, steam curling from the soft crumb inside. To new beginnings, he said. To bread and love and everything worth working for, Renna said, and they ate together in the warm glow of the oven, the winter night pressing cold against the windows but held at bay by the fire and the food and each other. Spring came slowly that year, the snow melting in fits and starts, the roads turning to mud and then to green. Jonas and Renner reopened the bakehouse, and the customers came back, drawn by the smell of fresh bread and the sight of the orc woman who worked beside the baker as though she had always been there. There were still whispers, still sidelong looks, but there were also people who smiled and nodded and paid for their loaves without comment. Slowly, carefully, the village began to accept what it could not change. Jonas paid down his debts a little at a time, the work steady and the profits small but reliable. Renna foraged and traded and experimented with new recipes, and the bakehouse's reputation grew. By the time the first green shoots appeared in the fields, they were no longer struggling. They were building. One morning in early spring, Jonas woke to find Renna standing by the window, her hand resting on her stomach. She was smiling, a secret, wondering smile, and when she saw him watching, she crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I think I am pregnant," she said. Jonas sat up, his heart leaping. "Are you sure?" "Not completely, but I have missed my cycle and I have been feeling strange in the mornings. I think so." He reached out and took her hand, the one with the ring on it, and kissed her knuckles. "Then we are going to need a bigger storeroom." She laughed, bright and clear, and pulled him into a kiss. "We are going to need a lot of things, but we will figure it out. We always do." The months passed, and Renna's belly grew round and firm. She worked as long as she could, shaping dough and tending the oven, and when she finally had to stop, Jonas hired a village boy to help with the heavy work. The boy was shy at first, nervous around Renna, but she won him over with patience and good humor, and by teaching him how to braid bread dough into intricate patterns. In late summer, when the fields were golden and the air was thick with the smell of ripening grain, Renna went into labor. Jonas sent the boy running for the midwife, a gruff old woman who had delivered half the village, and he stayed by Renna's side as the hours stretched on. She gripped his hand hard enough to bruise, her face sheened with sweat, and he whispered encouragement and wiped her forehead and tried not to let his fear show. When the baby finally came, squalling and red-faced, the midwife held her up with a satisfied nod. "A girl. Healthy lungs, good color." "You did well, lass." Renner reached for the baby, her hands trembling, and Jonas helped settle the tiny, wriggling bundle against her chest. The baby had green skin, small tusks barely visible, and a tuft of dark hair. She was perfect. "What should we name her?" Jonas asked, his voice hoarse. Renna looked down at their daughter, her expression soft with wonder. "Arya. Her name is Arya." Area Morrow, Jonas said, testing the name. It felt right. Welcome to the world, little one. The midwife stayed long enough to make sure Renna and the baby were settled, then took her payment and left with a stern reminder to rest and let the healing happen. Jonas closed the bakehouse for 3 days, putting a sign on the door that said simply, "New arrival. Back soon." The village understood. Some even left gifts on the doorstep. A basket of eggs, a jar of honey, a blanket knitted in soft wool. In the quiet days that followed, Jonas and Renna learned how to be parents. They learned the baby's cries, the way she liked to be held, the exact angle of her head when she was hungry. They took turns walking her when she fussed in the night, pacing the length of the bakehouse with her tiny body warm against their shoulders. It was exhausting and terrifying, and more beautiful than anything Jonas had ever known. Renna's brother came to visit when Arya was a month old, bringing gifts from the clan. A carved wooden rattle, a soft leather pouch for carrying the baby, and a blanket embroidered with the symbols of the Vor's line. He held his niece with careful, reverent hands and told Renna she looked tired but happy. "I am both," Renna said, laughing, "but mostly happy." "The clan sends their blessings," her brother said, "and an invitation when you are ready. They would like to meet her, to welcome her properly." Renna glanced at Jonas, who nodded. "We will come. When she is a little older and the travel is easier, tell them we are grateful." Her brother stayed for 2 days, helping with the baking and entertaining Arya with silly faces that made her gurgle and wave her tiny fists. When he left, he hugged Renna tightly and told her she had made the right choice. "I know," Renna said, "but thank you for saying it anyway." The years that followed were full and busy. Arya grew into a bright, curious child with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. She learned to walk in the bakehouse, toddling between the oven and the work table, and she learned to talk by asking endless questions about flour and yeast and why the bread rose. Jonas and Renna taught her the trade, patient and thorough, and by the time she was 5 she could shape a decent roll and knew not to touch the oven door without gloves. 2 years after Arya was born, Renna had another child, a girl they named Kira. Kira was quieter than her sister, thoughtful and observant, with a gift for noticing the small details that others missed. She loved to watch the dough rise and the bread bake, and she would sit for hours by the oven, humming to herself and counting the minutes until the loaves were ready. The bakehouse thrived. Jonas's debts were paid in full, and he and Renna began to save, slowly building a cushion against hard times. They expanded the storeroom and built a small addition to the bakehouse, a room with a real bed and a window that looked out over the village. They planted a garden behind the bakehouse, and Renna taught the girls how to grow vegetables and herbs and the wild grains she loved to forage. The village, too, began to change. More orcs came through, some as traders, some as travelers, and the people grew used to seeing green skin and tusks at the market. It was not always easy, and there were still moments of tension and suspicion, but Jonas and Renna's example had planted a seed. Slowly, carefully, it began to grow. One spring, when Arya was 7 and Kira was 5, Renna's brother came to visit again. This time he brought his own family, a wife and a baby son. They stayed for a week, and the children played together while the adults talked and baked and shared stories. On the last night they all sat around the fire in the garden, the stars bright overhead, and Renna's brother raised a cup in a toast. "To family," he said, "in all its forms." "To family," Jonas echoed, and they drank together, the warmth of the fire and the love around it chasing away the chill of the spring night. As the years went on, Jonas and Renna settled into the rhythm of their life together. They baked bread and raised their daughters and welcomed the changing seasons. They visited the clan when they could, and the clan visited them, the old boundaries between human and orc softening with each shared meal and each new generation. Arya grew into a young woman with a sharp mind and a kind heart, and she took over more and more of the bakehouse work as Jonas's hands began to ache with age. Kira became an apprentice to the village herbalist, her gift for observation serving her well. Jonas and Renna watched their daughters grow with pride and a bittersweet awareness of time's passage. One winter evening, when the snow was falling soft and thick outside, Jonas and Renna sat by the fire in the room they had built so many years ago. Arya and Kira were both away, Arya delivering bread to the inn and Kira studying with the herbalist, and the house was quiet. Renna leaned against Jonas, her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. The ring on her finger, worn smooth with years of wear, caught the firelight. "Do you ever think about that winter?" Jonas asked. "When I gave you bread and you came to work for me?" "Every day," Renna said softly. "I think about how cold I was and how hungry and how sure I was that I would not survive the season. And then I think about you, this strange human who gave me bread and gloves for no reason except that he could. And I think about how that one act of kindness changed everything." "You changed everything," Jonas said. "You saved the bakehouse. You saved me." "We saved each other," Renna said. She turned to look at him, her eyes warm and steady. "We built this life together, Jonas. Every loaf, every season, every moment, it was always both of us." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and she kissed him back. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the village in quiet white, but inside the bakehouse was warm and full of the smell of bread, and the presence of the people they loved. When they pulled apart, Renna smiled. "Come on. We should start the dough for tomorrow. Arya will be back soon and she will want to help." "Always working," Jonas said, but he was smiling too. "Always," Renna agreed. "That is what we do. We work and we love and we build, and we do it together." They stood and crossed to the work table, their hands moving in the familiar rhythm of their trade. The dough came together under their fingers, soft and alive, and they shaped it and set it to rise by the fire. When Arya came home, snow dusting her hair, she joined them without a word, and the three of them worked side by side, the bakehouse filled with laughter and light and the promise of bread in the morning. And in the quiet moments when the work was done and the house was still, Jonas would look at Renna and remember the winter he gave bread to an outcast orc girl. By spring, she had been wearing his ring and kissing him. And now, years later, she was still by his side, still his partner and his love, still the best decision he had ever made. The bakehouse stood strong, the oven burning bright, and the bread they made together fed not just the village but the life they had built, one loaf at a time.